Hello, everyone. Hello, Frank. Welcome to the next episode of Community Open Hours.
Hello, welcome. Welcome in the chat.
Frank, as always, we have one important reminder. Please remind our live viewers what this platform is for.
Yeah. This platform is first to talk with the community and get feedback from the community, get questions. And if there are no questions, we also prepare a topic where we can talk about and where questions may be raised for that. But all who watch us, you can interrupt us in the chat and priority to the questions.
Exactly. Thanks for a reminder because you know what happened? I just tried to trace back to the past, and when I would open a live stream, I would go like, "Yeah, welcome. Like, how you doing? Like, just say us hi. Where you're joining us from, and that's the platform where we are sharing some updates and on what's happening in YugabyteDB." But then you would just always add this in the end. But also, guys, ask the questions. And so this time you're going to open it. You're going to open it next time as well. So that, like, folks, yeah, that's the platform where we meet together. We meet virtually, but take this as an opportunity to ask what's on your mind when it comes to YugabyteDB, because we will do our best to answer the questions. Today we've got a very interesting topic. It's about connection pooling. We'll get to it a little bit later, probably in 5 minutes, because as usually in the beginning we have our kind of typical segment where we discuss some news. And Frank, folks, I've been talking to Frank because like we certainly joined this live stream at least 15 minutes earlier just to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And Frank shared with me his experience on the Postgres conference that took place in India. And I think that it would be criminal if we don't discuss it here today. Just like tell us, Frank, why you loved that conference in India so much.
I love it because it's for me it's in India where you find the community that is the most engaged, and engaged means the wish to learn, to share, to discuss with other, really being active in a conference, not coming to watch session, really coming to learn new thing, to discuss with people, and that's really nice. Also in terms of diversity, especially database conferences, you find older people usually.
Mm-hmm.
uh, here you really find juniors, you really find all kind of people, and that's really cool. The discussions are really nice. Also, something I like, I often go to conferences as a speaker, and it's always good to meet other speakers. Usually there are some speakers dinner organized, and it's a good occasion to meet other people, speakers, and people who share. But and that's kind of a recommendation I do for everyone. It's important that speakers talk not only to speakers but with attendees, and the goal is that everybody can share. So my recommendation is, do not be shy. It's not because we come as a speaker that we have uh, more skill or whatever. It's just that we come to share, and sharing is also talking together.
Yeah, everyone has its own ego, right? Ego.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if you've got that opportunity to be on stage, and then certainly welcome all the possible conversations. Sometimes I know that, especially in the tech community, but that's not even in the tech community, it's everywhere. Uh, we feel shy. Like it's
Yeah.
always a little bit clumsy to start a conversation. But if you're a speaker, you're not afraid to get on that damn stage. Like if you see that there are some people who are nearby,
Yeah.
and then you think that that conversation might be fruitful for everybody, start this conversation. To add a cherry on the pie, just tell us a little bit more about your workshop, because you said like the workshop lasted for 3 hours and 30 minutes. I just even had
Yeah.
time pronouncing it. Like what happened? Like what was the attendees drop rate?
That's a cool thing, and that's where you see motivated people. Everybody was there until the end, and there are some conferences because there are workshops on the morning, there are workshops on the afternoon, and workshops mean you learn new things, you play on your laptop, so it's kind of long day. And yeah, you can expect that on the afternoon after the break, some people just add enough and do not come back, which makes sense. Makes no sense to continue to try to learn things if your mind is full already of information. But yeah, everybody was back. Huh? So this is really where you see that
Yeah, this usually
this
doesn't. Yeah, this.
motivation, and yeah, that's really nice. And
Yeah, this.
coming back with questions, I mean, after the workshop, during the break, I didn't have a break because it was also the occasion to discuss with other people and about many things. There are other distributed database. For example, there is this Russian database made at Yandex, YDB. Funny because same letters. They have something in common in the architecture. There are something different, and we discussed with those people. It was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll actually talk about another product by Yandex a little bit later today. It's called Odyssey. Folks,
Uh-huh.
if you use Postgres, and probably you should have heard about Odyssey. That's another connection puller.
So I,
That
I
is.
learned something because, of course, I heard about Odyssey. I didn't know that it was made by Yandex. Yeah.
It's also, yeah, it's also like Yandex is a very interesting company. I mean, we can discuss it separately. But yeah, wonderful. Like just to wrap up, thanks for sharing this story, and thanks to all of you. Like if there is anybody on this stream right now who attended that Postgres conference in Bangalore right last week, just say hi to us. And if you folks live nearby, try to make it, because I live far away from India, but India was always on my to-do list, wish list, and hopefully one day I will make it, and I want to come to this conference as well, just to see the local community. Speaking about the other conferences, and we have a hi message from Shivan. Hi Shivan, thanks for joining us, and get your questions ready if anything doesn't make sense to you, or if you want to learn more about anything related to YugabyteDB. And actually, yeah, Shivan said that we use Odyssey with YugabyteDB in production. Wow, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, Shivan, let's stay in touch. If you can join us, our Slack message, YugabyteDB Slack message, just tag me, send me and Frank a note. Probably, if you are ready, we can schedule a separate stream in the future where we can discuss how Odyssey is used for production, because I don't know. I know Odyssey. I just did some sample experiments, but I have never used it for production. It would be cool to see how you folks deploy it, and what are the benefits and advantages. Just please send us a note in Slack. You
Yeah.
will find us. In the meantime, speaking about the other conferences, Frank and I, like if folks you live now traveling to the other part of the world, to the North America, if any of you lives in Los Angeles in California, then next week Frank and I, we are going to see each other for the first time. We are coming to that ScaleX conference. We have talks about Postgres, that's for sure. And if you are there, just please come. It's going to be an interesting experience, and we'll be happy to see you in person. Probably like some of you will be watching this live stream later. Make a note. We'll be in Los Angeles next time. Also, at least on my end, the one like the next, I have Dev Nexus. Let me share the screen because we are moving forward through our news segment. We are about to finish, my friends, and then we will get to the main topic. Let me find the right window because I don't want to share everyone window. Yeah, this one. DevNexus. DevNexus is for developers in Atlanta. It's also in North America. And this time, Postgres, United States Association will be there. We will have a booth. And if you have any questions related to Postgres, or like if to YugabyteDB, just come to DevNexus and find us in the exhibition area. And also, I will be giving a talk. But enough of the conferences. So what's next? What are the other news? If you're a developer or some other technical guy, we refreshed YugabyteDB Developer Hub. So you will find it. Just go to the YugabyteDB website, and you will find under the resources, you will find the Developer Hub. It looks nice. We have a new build and learn tutorial. By building that tutorial, you will figure out how to you will figure out the essential capabilities of YugabyteDB. Then we certainly have started building the tutorials for various programming languages. If you don't see your language on the list, again, find us in Slack and punch us. We'll make sure it appears. Then some sample applications that you want to try to build, to experiment, or to make use of, and some other updates, like for instance, events. Many people asked me and Frank, like, guys, like, how do we find, let's say, the previous community open hours and when the next is coming? So right now on this developer hub, you'll see this is what we have today, and next week we are scheduling the next one. So go check this new developer hub. I will share the links with you folks in a
I've
few
just
minutes.
put the link. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Have you shared it on LinkedIn as well? Yeah,
Yeah.
let me do this. Let me do this because on LinkedIn we
Yeah.
had difficulties. We had difficulties with LinkedIn the last two episodes, and right now we are streaming it the old way.
Yeah. So you put
Yeah,
it.
almost.
Oh, I can.
Yeah, I did it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. And another one is what else? Yeah, we pre-announced. The distributed PostgreSQL Essential course. I always take an opportunity to brag about myself. You see, like that's the picture. That's me. But nevertheless, jokes aside, my friends, its course is going to be interested for those of you who are starting with YugabyteDB and also or you already know Postgres. And here is we will talk about distributed PostgreSQL, and YugabyteDB is the distributed Postgres. We will also educate you, teach you on the essential capabilities. We will start with Postgres. We will build our application using Postgres first. Then we will transition to scalable YugabyteDB cluster. We will deploy across regions, making sure that you can tolerate various outages. And also we will review several design patterns so that you can achieve low latency across distant locations. It's just share your email and we will get you notified once this course is live. Let me share this with everyone. Also, I'm sharing this on LinkedIn and I'm sharing it here, and it will be distributed to YouTube, Twitter. I don't know Twitter. No, probably at least to YouTube and Twitch.
Twitch. Yeah.
Cool. Anything else from you and Frank? Any other news you'd like to share before we move forward?
Not that I'm thinking of. So yeah, we can move to connection puller.
Let's start. Connection pooling. Why? Like, let's clarify this, because those of you folks who paid attention to the title of this stream, you should have noticed that the title is not connection pooling in YugabyteDB, but server-side connection pooling. Frank, why did we decide to put this prefix, like this server side, in the beginning? What's the point of having the server side connection pooling?
I think it's a bit like proxies. You have proxies and reverse proxies, which I don't really like as a name, where the difference is that you have a proxy between the application and the server, but you can put it on the client side or on the server side. If you have a one-to-one between the application and the server, then it's globally the same, but usually you don't have a one-to-one. If you have a monolithic database, for example, you have only one database, but hopefully you have multiple application servers. And if you have a distributed database, you have an end-to-end because you have probably multiple application servers and multiple database nodes, which means that you can put the pooler, this proxy between the two, on one side and on the other. And there are good reasons to do it on one side or the other, which can depend on the architecture in general. Maybe I can mention that I've been working with databases for a very, very, very long time, and usually the connection pooler was on the server, on the client side, just because if you start, let's say, 3 application servers, each one has a connection pool. You set 10, 20, 50 connections, and then on the database, you have a few hundreds of connections, and that's okay. And that worked very well until microservices came. And when microservices came, we had 10, 15, 20 microservices, each one with multiple instances and its own connection pool. And then I was a DBA at that time. We have seen connection storm on the database and too many connections.
This is a
Maybe
good
I,
sto- yeah, this is a good story. Like if I also can share my experience, because
yeah.
you like I think those days when you just saw this tsunami, right, of connections coming from the application to the database. Uh, I also like, for me, the connection pooling was always like, whenever anybody would ask me about connection pooling in the past, I would think about the client side connection pooling, because I don't want to say I used to be an application developer. I'm still an application developer, but I don't spend days and hours, just coding something. But in the past, when I worked full time as an application developer, we were building those backend high load applications, and we always would have some client side connection pooling. But
Mhm.
then, like you mentioned, this microservices architecture. And when I was building those apps for many years, microservices were not a thing yet. Like we would have some modules. Our application would always consist of few modules, probably like 3 or 4, but primarily we would be able to manage the number of connections. And we would, let's say, if someone from the database end, administrators or DBAs, would see some worrisome kind of traffic, they would just give us a call and say, guys, just what's going on, and we would just adjust the number of connections. But the microservices, yeah, like, it's just my quick remark, because I think that eventually, once I started thinking about microservices, and once the microservices became the thing, then I got introduced to the world of server-side connection pooling.
I can add something because you mentioned that the DBA call you and you adjust the connection pooling, and maybe that's the main problem even before microservices. Who defines the number of connection on a client-side connection pool? The developer. Who knows how many resources the database has? The DBA. And I've seen too many times, there are many companies where operations and development do not talk to each other, and the communication is not easy. And what happens often, the database is slow, then uh, the application side increases the connection pool. Basically, if the database is slow because there are locks or because you're used to more processes than CPU, increasing the connection pool will not solve the problem at all. So that's also a problem. If people do not talk together, the application may think that increasing the connection pool, if they see a queue in the connection pool and they increase it, they will not see a queue anymore, maybe, but the latency of the queries will not be solved at all.
You know,
Actually, it's a good idea to queue before a server, mostly because when you queue in front of it, you do not queue the queries when they hold resources. If you don't, if you send too many resources on a server, Linux is okay. Linux will stop and run them at their time on the CPU, but maybe it will queue a session that holds the lock. And then this session waits to put another one in CPU just to realize that it's waiting on a lock, and then, yeah, always better to queue before in front. And that was the idea of client side connection pool, except that it had to be tuned according to the database resources.
you know what? I could not resist to share my thoughts on Twitter, on X, because you know what? Like, the reason why we have the server-side connection pooling, like why it's so popular these days. Yeah, like microservices is obvious, but the second reason is that DBAs and developers don't talk to each other. This is
Yeah,
actually very fun. I mean, in my first of this high load project, we had only we used Postgres, and we had only the client side connection pooling. And why did we have only the client side connection pooling? Because the DBA, he is one of the best friends of mine right now. He was sitting across me, and like he would just like, hey Dennis, what the hell is going on? Just go ahead and like just update your Java like setup, like something is happening with the Postgres. Like we were having fun, etc. That's the reason. So let's but
yeah.
that's so why I'm sharing this. Uh let's try to figure this. But okay, now but to be honest, now we see the reason of having client side and server side connection pooling. But do we need to have both? What's your
We
opinion?
can. For example, we can, but we will probably define them differently. For example, if you have microservices, you want a connection pool that is very dynamic. You don't want each microservice instance to allocate 10 connections just in case. So you will set it very dynamic. Minimum one session can go up to 10. But dynamic connection pool are usually, I've heard people saying that a dynamic connection pool is like a loaded gun in front of your database, because at some point it will start many connections, which in many databases are starting processes, allocating memory, so something that is not light. And if you have many at the same time, then it will be a problem. So if you have a server-side connection pool in addition of that, then even if you open many connections from the client side, they will be managed on the server side. So there is a reason for that. Of course, if you add it as a proxy, then it adds some latency. So you need to think about that. But latency may be okay. If the latency is just a few milliseconds, that's probably not even visible on the query response time. Of course, if it is queued, then it will increase the latency. But if it is queued just before because the server and the database cannot handle the load, then there is a reason for that. Yeah.
I got it. I got it. Sounds good. Sounds good. Then I think that now we see the reason for having server side, client side, and we understand the difference. By the way, we've got a message from Ashwar. Thanks, Ashwar, for joining us again. I think that the last 2 times we were not receiving your comments through this from LinkedIn because today we are streaming the old way. Thanks for coming
Which
back.
works better, or at least which we control a bit better.
It's reliable. It's reliable. At least, yeah. It's there are many more manual steps involved, but it's reliable. Okay, so then now YugabyteDB and connection pooling. Why did we decide to, like in our description, we mentioned PgBouncer, we mentioned Odyssey, and we also mentioned built-in connection manager of YugabyteDB.
So a third one, you can put one on the client, you can put one in front of the database, and we have one within the database.
Exactly. So how about starting, as long as YugabyteDB is built on Postgres, and I usually talk about, I'm not shy guy, and I usually talk about YugabyteDB as the distributed version of Postgres. I think that eventually, if there are some of the, like just as a quick, step back, there are some of the initiatives within the core Postgres community that would help to make Postgres truly distributed. But even if they do this, people understand that they would give up many features that already exist in the current Postgres version, which means that I have reason for saying that YugabyteDB is distributed Postgres because we support all the important and valuable features of the Postgres, but we don't need to have Postgres built-in replication, right? We don't need to have any extension that look after the Postgres storage layer because we're just different in that sense. But PgBouncer is probably one of the most famous connection pullers in the Postgres ecosystem. And turns out it also works with YugabyteDB because we are Postgres compatible. We are distributed Postgres. Frank,
yeah,
you're going to drive the conversation about PgBouncer. Before you show us how it works, tell us, did you hack PgBouncer? Did you need to build your own version of PgBouncer to make it working with YugabyteDB? Or
not at all. I just take the standard PgBouncer because it's in front of Postgres, which means that it sends queries to Postgres and then the same to Yugabyte. Yeah. So basically, it is exactly the same.
Wonderful. This is what we want.
There is no difference. It works exactly the same because it talks to the query layer, and we use Postgres as the query layer. Yeah.
Okay. Simple, probably a little bit boring for you, my friends, right? We just
maybe one thing as we have a distributed database, then you may have to think about how many PgBouncers. For example, you can start YugabyteDB in Kubernetes pods, and maybe you can start PgBouncer in each pod. Or maybe you will start one or a few ones on each availability zones. It's probably it's probably not a good idea to connect to a PgBouncer in availability zone A that will connect to Yugabyte in availability zone B. First, because of the latency, and second, because of the availability. If one or the other is down, then all is down. So you probably want to have
We
at
need to
least
collocate, right?
one
As
for
we say.
each zone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's sort of a collocation strategy.
Yeah.
Whatever you have in every zone, you have. Uh, and yeah, at least it just works. It just works. This is a good example of the Postgres compatibility, of the runtime and feature level compatibility in action. And we've got a before, but folks, that's usually not enough. If you attend us regularly, this format, then you know that I think that we have not had any community open hours episode without any demo. So Frank will show you some demo.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But now we've got a question. Frank, we need to take a pause, and we have a question from the first one is from Manish. Hey Manish, thanks for asking. So like the question was this: how having a server-side connection pool manager in front of servers advantages compared to the default load balancer of YugabyteDB? Do you want to postpone this question, because I think that we are going to discuss our connection manager in the end, or you want to give some hints already?
I think this is not related to the connection manager. This is having a server side, so like PgBouncer,
Okay.
in front of T servers instead of the default load balancer. So they have different purpose. Actually, the PgBouncer doesn't do load balancing. If you want to do load balancing plus connection pooling, then you may have both. The default load balancer is the HR proxy, for example, in YugabyteDB managed. So that's one where you connect and the connection will go to different nodes to balance the load, because you can connect and run SQL on all nodes. So the idea is to balance the connections. If you want to balance and pool, you can have multiple PgBouncers in front of multiple T servers and a HA proxy in front of it. For example, in your zone, you start multiple YugabyteDB nodes, and you start multiple PgBouncer, maybe in each pod, and then in front, yeah, typically in Kubernetes, you will deploy a stateful set per availability zone, and in them, each pod will have YugabyteDB. You can have a PgBouncer in the same pod as a sidecar, for example, and you will have a service in front of it that is the HR proxy. I think it is also possible to do the opposite, means you connect to a PgBouncer that connects to Yugabyte node through a HA proxy. But I don't think that PgBouncer can load balance. I'm not 100% sure, but
I
I don't
don't.
think that.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Oh,
But we can.
something also important. PgBouncer is a single process. So if you want to scale it, you can start multiple ones. They can listen to the same port, but you start multiple ones. And if you start multiple ones, then maybe you will start one by node. If you want to, everything that you put in front of HA proxy is probably something that is at least multi-threaded, because you have many connections that you want to distribute.
Yeah, to my knowledge, because I was working on that research and article on Postgres high availability options. In the Postgres ecosystem, you have PgPool, and PgPool actually does both. It does load
Yeah,
balancing and connection pooling.
yeah,
PgBouncer is focused on connection pooling only. And as Frank noted, if you want to enable load balancing, then you need to use HA proxy. This is actually what happens with Postgres. You have HA proxy. If you have multiple Postgres instances, one is primary, the others are replicas, and you want to load balance read traffic, then you deploy PgBouncers for the primary, for the replicas, and then you have the HA proxy that can transfer those requests.
Maybe something that I didn't test with Postgres client version 16, the library libpq can load balance with a list of hosts and setting pg load balancer equal random. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that PgBouncer uses libpq to connect to Postgres. So maybe there is a way to distribute the connection that way, but no, it's probably not the best.
Anyway, yeah, let's quickly go through a few follow-up questions from Shiwan. How does the internal, I don't know, Shiwan, this question is internal server-side connection pool work in YugabyteDB. So this one we will discuss in the end.
Yeah.
Because, and actually going back to Manish's question is, it's basically, we understood at the Yugabyte, we understood that you can reuse what exists in the Postgres ecosystem, but we also introduced our own connection manager because we want that to be transparent, and that connection manager can act as both, I think, connection pooling and load balancing, right? I think so. So what else did we have to from Manish? Can just increase maximum number of connections per T server and just let load balancer do its job. Won't it be as good as having the connection pool manager?
So maybe it is less important in Yugabyte because in Postgres, for example, if you have too many connections, it will allocate too much memory and you cannot do anything else. In Yugabyte, you can scale out. So yeah, at least you can say you add more nodes. But for the moment, and we will talk about the connection manager later, but for the moment, we use the same connection layer as Postgres, which is not threaded, which means that a connection forks a process, and that can be expensive in terms of resources. So it's still better to have connection pooling in front of the database instead of scaling to multiple nodes. Also, today, when we scale to multiple nodes, it scales the CPU, the memory, the storage, and maybe you just want to take more connections without adding more memory. That's also something important, controlling the cost.
Yeah, I mean,
because
we
of
do
course
scale.
you can scale out with Yugabyte, you can scale out, but it has a cost. If the problem is just to absorb a few peak of activity, and if it's okay to have just a little more increased latency, then probably better to queue in front rather than paying 3 times the server just for a little peak. So yeah, there are many solutions that can be combined or yeah.
All right, yeah. Let's. We are running out of time with this segment. Let's do this as a quick summary to this. Yes, as Frank noted, we can scale, and this is how you can scale your resources, your connections, etc. But also, as Frank highlighted, when you connect to any YugabyteDB node, a new connection is a new Postgres process, right? Because we are Postgres, and if you actually if you run ps aux, if you want to see the processes that's running on your operating system, when you open connection to YugabyteDB to server, you will see that every new connection is every new process, which means that a connection pooling on the server side still makes sense for YugabyteDB node if you want to use your resources on a single node, on a single machine, as efficient as possible. But Frank, show us your demo. Now let's get to that.
So I will not show the whole setup. I used a setup similar to the last OpenAware we did, I think, where I had a container and I had a Grafana to look at some metrics, and I used the same framework, but I've added a new service in my Docker Compose that starts PgBouncer, and here is the configuration file. So already you can get an idea. PgBouncer is not the something that is born last year. You can see that it's not a YAML, it's not a JSON, it's a .ini file, which probably means that it has several years. And basically in the connection, so PgBouncer will expose a port where you connect to instead of connecting to Postgres or Yugabyte. And this port is the listen port. I use 5433 because I started in another container, and then I can listen to the same port, but it starts later. So basically you say where it's listened to, And from the listen port, it looks like Postgres. And then it will connect to the real Postgres or YugabyteDB by defining databases. So if you connect to the Yugabyte database in this server, PgBouncer container, then it will forward the connections or the executions to connection it has to another database, which is on another container that I called YugabyteDB. I can show you quickly my Docker Compose.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, basically just configure what folks just to while Frank is opening, what Frank showed you is that configuration file, like typical one, a template one, right? And you just took that template that was probably created for Postgres, and then you adjusted a few connection related parameters, and that's it. That's how you use
So
that's how
I
you use
just
PgBouncer for YugabyteDB.
I just start PgBouncer from an image that has PgBouncer. I tell where is the configuration file, which I put as a volume in /etc something, and that's all. And then in the connection, so you define the listening port, you define where it connects to, and you have a few parameters, of course, logging, etc. But most important is how many connections it starts. So here I defined transaction mode because that's really new in PgBouncer. Maybe we can mention the problem with connection pooling is that you share the connections, but so the connections may have a state. So if I prepare a statement in one session and then I execute it in another session, I will not see it. So it has to do some magic when it pulls the transaction where the application thinks it is the same session, but the transaction will go to different session. And that was a new feature in the latest PgBouncer, the transaction mode to support it. Basically, it does some magic, renaming the prepared statement, checking if it's already prepared, all that. So basically, here I define a minimum pool size, and I have a default somewhere where I just choose the default. So by default, it will not create 10 connections, but as soon as there is one connection to PgBouncer, it will start 10 connections to Yugabyte in front. And if the load increases, it can go to more connections, like 30 connections. There are also some parameters. If a connection is idle for a long time, it can be dropped.
Okay,
So
okay.
very, very
Let's
similar.
start it.
Yeah,
Very similar
very
to
similar to the parameters that you have in client side. And here, so first I test without connection pool. I connect directly to YugabyteDB with 3
okay.
sessions.
That's gonna be
And
fun.
I was showing that in my Grafana, I displayed the total number of connections. I'll also check the connections from PG start activity, and then I see the state. So I see that I have 3 connections because I started PG Bench with 3 clients. So it's 1 to 1, and most of them are active. Some are idle in the transaction because PG Bench is a lot of small transactions. You can see the throughput that is also displayed by PG Bench, and that's the most interesting. I also check in PG start activity, we have added something in Yugabyte. We add the memory size of each process, which I add there. So you see that my 3 connections have about 5 megabytes of allocated memory.
All right,
This is
man.
the
Like
same.
it
This is
looks
the
like
same as the memory in, when you do a PS on Linux, for example.
you
But let's, yeah.
already getting ready. You already getting us ready for production environment. It's basically a master class on how to. It's it's not just a simple, demo that just proves that you can use it, but it's just a quick master class on how to make it working for your real production workload. This is DBA speaks in you, right?
Because I want to see the consequence. I want to see what
All right,
happened on the database.
let's do it.
And now I run exactly the same 3 clients, but connected to PgBouncer. And we will see the difference in transaction per second and latency to see if it adds some latency. So after 15 seconds, it starts to display. So I have similar transaction per second. It will probably increase a bit later with the cache. And you see that the latency is similar, maybe not even 1 millisecond more. So I have this additional hop network call for each one. And if I look at the connection and I refresh there, so I still have 3 clients, but as soon as I started to use PgBouncer started the 10 connections that I mentioned. The idea is that it's always better to have, you don't want to have thousands of idle connections, but it's also good to have a few ones. Then they will be ready to take new queries. But I have only 3 active, about 3 active, because they are currently used. And the
So
throughput
generally,
is the
yeah,
same.
what this graph shows so that like the green is your physical connections. Those are real Postgres processes, right? They're
Yeah,
accepting and handling, and those are pulled by PgBouncer. And the blue one shows us like how many connections we had in total, right? And those
yeah,
connections
because the
are
blue is the
logical,
idle one. So here
idle.
I over provisioned the connections just to be ready and to go fast. I will start quickly. Let's say that I have crazy developers who think everything will be faster with 90 connections, which if I connect directly to a small node of YugabyteDB on a container where I don't have a lot of memory, I don't have a lot of CPU, it can be bad to start too many connections. But here, you can see that they will be queued. So of course, because they will be queued, you have more latency. The throughput is a bit higher, but not what you expect when you go from 3 to 90, just because you don't have the resource for that. If you want that, you need to scale. But here, latency is higher, but nothing fail. I don't have out of memory errors, whatever, because PgBouncer has has queued them. So it had 10 connections. Given that it is asking for 19 connections, then it increases automatically the pool, but to the maximum I've set. I've set a maximum of 30 connections because I know that I don't have put the number of vCPUs in front to handle that. And then I have 30 connections always active. The application uses more than that, but they are kind of throttled by
Are you still
by the
here?
proxy in front of it.
Oops. Yeah, looks like we are losing Frank. Frank, there
Sorry.
yeah there was a short glitch. Yeah, we lost your last 5 seconds. So
Okay.
now you're
Yeah,
good.
should be okay.
Now
I don't know.
let's
Probably the internet. I always ask the kid not to upgrade
yeah.
it at the time of the live, but maybe the internet. But the important thing is that, of course, I'm using more memory there, but I have full control of it. I will not use more than 30 connection on Yugabyte or on Postgres. So I can really set the connection pool according to the resources that I have.
Excellent. Let's stop this demo because I think that demo influences the stability of your laptop. Yeah, this I remember that in one of our past episodes, it was like yeah, you prepared some setup and what was in Docker, and Docker basically consumed all of your resources and your laptop.
Now I do everything on the cloud. This is on the cloud, and I just tunnel the port. You see, the default port for Grafana is 3000, and I tunneled it to my laptop. So yeah, the problem was not the laptop here. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for the intro on PgBouncer. Before we go to Odyssey, because as a Postgres compatible database, we support other connection pullers, and I will just do a quick sanity check demo. But we've got a question from Shiwan. And I actually also, I don't know the answer right now because I've never checked. Does YugabyteDB Smart Driver work with PgBouncer? Because it did not
Very
work.
good question. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Go ahead.
Very good question. Of course, it works because it can connect to the PgBouncer. But the problem is that the idea of the smart driver is that with one connection, it detects the other nodes. So then I didn't test it, but I'm quite sure that what will happen if you use the smart driver and you connect through PgBouncer, the smart driver will ask for all the YugabyteDB nodes, will get a list, and then will connect to them. If the network is open, it will connect directly, which means that you will have only one connection through the PgBouncer and the others direct. So basically, it's not a good solution. The whole idea of the smart driver was to make things simple for those who don't want to add another component. If you add an HA proxy, if you add a server-side connection pool, then probably you don't want to use the smart driver. Of course, you can use the smart driver, but say load balance equal false.
Cool. Hope it answers your question. I think that, yeah, like, and this is what Shawan stated there. I think that it was possible, probably, Shawan, to get smart driver connected with Odyssey, but it didn't do what the driver was designed for, right? It was not load balancing the requests across various Odyssey instances. Nevertheless, but that's actually why we need to dedicate some time of this session discussing our built-in connection manager, because we created it for several reasons. I think that connection manager does work with our own smart driver. But stay tuned. Now, let me let me share my screen, because when we discuss server-side connection pooling options, it was obvious to show that PgBouncer works. And right now, you even can see how you have to set up your Grafana dashboards, my friends. if you didn't get it, just find Frank in Slack. What I will show you, I want to quickly show Odyssey. That's another very popular alternative in the Postgres ecosystem. Let me share the right screen. So Odyssey is an open source project, and I think that it was created internally first and used by Yandex. Yandex is the Google. It's like the Google of Russia. They have many talented engineers who like to build systems, databases, and other products from scratch. Odyssey is not the only one. I think that ClickHouse probably was also initially created by Yandex, if I'm not mistaken. Nevertheless, Odyssey, one of the biggest advantages and differences from PgBouncer is that PgBouncer, like every PgBouncer, is like a separate process, right, on your operating system. And if you want to utilize as many CPUs as possible on your machine, then you need to start several instances of PgBouncer, and then you need to load balance, right, the load across those PgBouncers. And Odyssey solved this problem. With Odyssey, it's just advanced multi-threaded Postgres connection pooler. You just start one instance of Odyssey on your machine, and it will be using multiple threads to utilize all of your CPUs. At least for me, this sounds like one of the biggest advantages. And then you can check the other options. Today, I just want to confirm that this beast works with YugabyteDB. So what I have, I've already deployed my YugabyteDB cluster in Docker. Where is it? It's here, 3 nodes cluster running. And if I go to, where is my terminal? Show me my terminal. It's here on the other screen. Now I want to connect to YugabyteDB PSQL. Let's use it, as long as we are talking about Postgres compatibility. My first node listens on this port number, and the user is YugabyteDB, and password is YugabyteDB as well, but you will not be able to connect to my instance. And now, like, how do I check? I connected to YugabyteDB directly, no any connection pooling. And as a sanity check, let me make sure that I have connected to the right YugabyteDB cluster, YugabyteDB servers. Yeah, those are my 3 nodes running on my local Docker environment, kind of my own private data center. Next, Odyssey. Odyssey actually is designed for Linux, and you need, when you use it in production, you run it on Linux. And what's here? What I have this terminal. But the guys did a great job. When you want to run few experiments, you can do this in Docker. And I'm going to start it in Docker. So here is, I cloned the Odyssey from GitHub, and here is under the Docker folder, I created this configuration. I obviously, same as Frank had the configuration template for PgBouncer. I found this configuration template for Odyssey, and here is before I had the Postgres related settings, but I just changed it. My storage, my database is YugabyteDB type remote, meaning that it's deployed remotely. And my Postgres, I'm going to run Odyssey in Docker. Even though my YugabyteDB cluster also runs in Docker, they're not running on the same network. I'm lazy. That's why Odyssey is going to connect to my YugabyteDB instance through the host operating system. That's why this address. But that's it. And then credentials, now you know my password. Yeah, it's YugabyteDB as well, but still you will not be able to connect. So that's all you need to do. I just change these configuration settings, and then once it starts, I don't know like what these settings, most of the other settings mean. Uh, I just wanted just to see what my experience would be. And once Odyssey starts, it will be listening for the upcoming connections on this port number. If you follow the getting started guide, all you need to do next is do docker compose up. It created those containers and it starts several containers. If I jump to my Docker dashboard, here is you will have a few, and one of them is this one. This one is going to listen to my incoming connection, and this Odyssey one is going to connect to my YugabyteDB node that I define here. And I know that Shiwan knows Shiwan, who disclose that they use Odyssey in production with YugabyteDB knows much more, but Shivan, forgive me for my simple experiment. Let's discuss and hopefully we will arrange a dedicated session on Odyssey with you. But now I know the port number and let me try to connect to that instance, okay? So I'm quitting this connection and now I want to connect to 64, was it 6432, right? It was 6432. That was the port number, I guess. Yeah, 6432. And I don't need this. If I connect it this time, I will not be able to connect. I was trying to troubleshoot this problem. I don't know, it might be Docker related, but how I fixed it, there is a special process that you might want to start. I am going to connect to my Odyssey container and run this command, od start. It started that process that's going to accept connections, and now I connected. Now I connected to my YugabyteDB cluster through Odyssey. And if I run the same request through Odyssey, tell me more about my cluster from, yeah, works, right? So this is a quick and dirty experiment. It works. And it took me a
and
couple of
Shivang
hours.
is saying, aha, love your explanation as well, Denis.
Yeah, let's see what Shiva says, because he's the expert in Odyssey and the YugabyteDB, not me. One issue I see using Odyssey is that the server-side prepared statement doesn't work in the transaction pool mode. Huh.
That's a good occasion to talk about the
Next
connection
one.
manager that we have.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Because
Yeah,
that's a reason we have built something else, and the connection manager that we put within Yugabyte is based on Odyssey because it is multi-threaded and many reasons. And then what did we do to support prepared statements? So it's interesting to look at all connection pools. PgBounce, so Odyssey doesn't support them. PgBouncer supports them, but that's new. That was 2 months ago. By renaming the prepared statement, keeping track of them, which means that PgBouncer has to parse your statement to look at it and say, oh, this is a prepared statement. What we decided to do with the connection manager is that rather than doing all this stuff and saying there are things that we support, there are things that we do not support, what we do is first we detect the features that cannot be shared between multiple sessions, and then we will use some kind of stickiness to get it. So the idea is that if you have a prepared statement with the internal Odyssey that we put in the database, where the code base is Odyssey, but we changed a lot of things, the idea is that if you use a prepared statement, it will detect it, and then it will put some stickiness so that it knows that this client connection must go to this server connection.
love it. I love it.
And that for prepared statements, but there are many things that have a state in a session in Postgres. If you create a temporary table, it belongs to your session. You cannot create a temporary one in one session and then get another connection from the pool and continue. You will not see it. Setting parameters is another one. That's what I have in mind. But there are many things that are related to one session. And that's also the reason why Postgres never really threaded the sessions, because there are a lot of global variables in it. So the way we do that is we add the connection pool where the goal is that it is transparent. And at some point, don't be afraid. It will be only when it is stable and it supports all kind of features. At some point, the idea is that we will replace the normal endpoint by the internal connection manager, because it will work exactly the same. If you use something that cannot be shared, then it will use this stickiness to give you a dedicated session. So that's the goal. Not yet in production. There is some part in preview, but the goal is really that it can be used transparently. When it can share session, it will do. When it cannot, it will just use dedicated sessions.
And for me, I mean, this inability to pool transactions, right, was one of the previous reasons why we created, was one of the reasons why we initially created this connection manager, because PgBouncer didn't support them.
Yeah.
But now, like even today, you demonstrated, like in your settings, in your configuration settings, you had that transaction level configuration, which means that the latest version of PgBouncer already supports that. It can pull transactions.
But it's a kind of a hack, and then it doesn't support everything. I'm a big fan of a connection pool within the database, because I've been working a lot with Oracle that has a database, DRCP, database resident connection pool. And that's the idea, having a connection pool as a feature of the database rather than a proxy in front of the database.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is that eventually PgBouncer and Odyssey, they should catch up on those essential features.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, they should, right? If they want to remain and be valuable within the Postgres community. But for me, also, if to talk about Oracle about the Oracle way, for me, the biggest advantage also of this own built-in connection manager is that it's transparent.
Yes.
Because right now, I have nothing against Odyssey or PgBouncer, wonderful projects. But for me, it's an extra component that I have to set up, maintain, monitor, upgrade, etc. Right, and then I need to load balance. That we had that conversation. While when you have something built in, it means that the responsibility becomes our responsibility. Like those who create YugabyteDB, we at YugabyteDB are responsible for this connection manager. We will make sure that it's all everything transparent to you, right? You just right now it's in tech preview, but going forward, so like we are not recommending it to use for production, but folks, give it a try, probably start using it for your pre-production environments and share feedback with us. But going forward, I think that our vision is that sometime in the future, when you connect to YugabyteDB, you will not be connecting to a database node directly, but you will be connecting to this connection manager, and the connection manager will be handling the rest for you, right? And it will be all perfectly well integrated with the smart driver. But I think that it probably already, it's already said that we are used with a smart driver. This one supports smart driver already. So take a look, folks. I shared the link with you on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch. But also, I remember that Shiwan asked the question on related to this one. Is this one, does internal server-side connection pool work on? Does it increase? Yeah, like this one. This one I think is related to our own connection manager. Do you wanna take this question?
So the internal server-side connection pool, does it increase the connection threshold with increase the number of client connections? So yes, it will be tunable, but the idea is also to match when it is within the database. It can also look at the load on the node, and then it can also share connection or create new physical backends only when there is enough resources. So the reason why it is in preview, there are many things like that. We are in preview. We have some customers using it, giving feedback. It helps to tune it, see what can must be tuned automatically. Also, there are a few things that we may have to change when you select from PG start activity. You want to see both information. You want to see all connections because it's transparent. So if you have 100 logical connection, you want to see them in PG start activity, but you also want to know which ones are the physical ones and which one are the logical ones, because at some point, for example, you will add the memory and you don't want to add the logical one. So this is also why it is in preview. We need to put it in the right way in the views to give something that is still Postgres compatible in pgstart activity, to use the tools that monitor pgstart activity, but that makes sense with logical connection and physical connections. So the tuning of it, they will still work on it, and feedback will help. Yeah.
All right. All right. Sounds good. And we've just ran out of time. I've got the one question. It's Ishwarya.
Ishwar asked where to
If
find particular error logs. So in YugabyteDB, you have an error log on all nodes. The idea of YugabyteDB is that it is scalable, so there is nothing in common, it is shared nothing. We do not recommend, for example, to put the logs in a single storage like NFS. You want things that scale, so each node has its log, and then if you put a proxy in front of it, it will have its log. If you want to collect the log, then the logs, then that's another tool. For example, if you use Wabi managed, you will have access to the log that are collected automatically from all the nodes. But the idea is that there is not a single log, because we want it to be scalable, and because you may deploy nodes in different regions. You may have in the logs, sometimes you can find some data. So if you have data sovereignty rules that tells you that the data must stay in Europe, you don't want a common log that will share the logs on other regions. So the logs are not common, but you can query them to make them common.
all right. Hope Ashwar that covers your question. And we've got a quick feedback from Shivan. Frank, your previous explanation was straight to the point. Okay, it was straight to the point. So, having said that, let me check one more time. Do we have any last minute questions? If not, then we will
And
say.
if you test something in preview, it is normal if you find limitation. It is normal if you find some issues in specific cases. It is also normal if you don't find your answers in the documentations. That's the idea of preview, is that people can use it, give feedback, so that we don't build a documentation just of the theory of what we think will be useful for users. Those who use it in preview give feedback, and then we know exactly what we can address and how we can address it with more automation, more documentation, more features, whatever.
Yep, yep. Agree. Another question is from Ramesh. What's the best way to learn all this from the beginning in the interest of YugabyteDB? Let me share, Manesh, it depends on what's your learning style. If you let me share my screen one more time. If you are an application developer, then just go to our developer hub. You will find it on the YugabyteDB website, and you will find the link on YouTube. I shared it recently. So here is, as an application developer, you can learn the essential capabilities of YugabyteDB by building this movie recommendation service. Just several chapters. Take it slowly and enjoy the process. If you are more of that style when you want to watch something, right? We certainly do these live streams, and we, like in community open hours live streams, we have a history, but it's more conversational. At the same time, we have Friday Tech Talks, and Friday Tech Talks is just a gold mine for those who wish to know like YugabyteDB internal specificities for engineers by engineers. Like we have how many? Like, probably
Can you
almost.
search if we have the connection manager or not
We
yet?
should. Let me see.
Because There are some
connection.
talks about features in preview. The idea of the talks is that it's directly the engineers explaining and showing the features.
Exactly. So you have this option, Friday Tech Talks, and also we have University. University is also that interesting old good format. And Ramesh said that yeah, he is the DB administrator reliability. That's why yeah, like to check University, we have courses for administrators. Let me share the link with you. You'll get it on YouTube, and also YugabyteDB Friday Tech Talks and technical documentation. And also never mind finding Frank, me, or anybody else from the YugabyteDB community on Slack. You can just join us. Here is community Slack on the website. Join, tag us, ask your question. But in the meantime,
Or social network and any way as you want. Slack is very easy because then we can easily involve colleagues that are more specialized. But if Slack is a problem for you, you can also find us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on a lot of platforms. There is also a forum.
in the meantime, I'm sharing with you the link to University if you also want to explore that opportunity. So, what else? So let's see. Any other questions? I don't
And to
see.
learn, there also you can find on YouTube a lot of videos from
Oh yeah.
Denis, most of them.
Yep. This is my style. I like to talk. I like to show. All right. I think this wraps up this episode. Thanks a lot, my friend Frank, for joining and making it happen. And thanks a lot to all of you, my friends, who watched us today, and especially those who asked us all of those questions. And those of you who will be watching this live, hope you will find this useful, because the goal of this stream was not to do a deep dive on any particular connection pooling. We just did so-called whirlwind tour of connection pooling options for YugabyteDB. We showed you quickly PgBouncer, Odyssey, because we are Postgres compatible database, and also we quickly discussed the built-in connection manager that should become our primary connection pooler in the future. But thanks for coming, and we hope to see you in the future.
Thank you. Goodbye.